Welcome to Craving the Heat, where desire takes the lead and every story leaves you wanting more. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share your thoughts in the comments and keep up with our latest naughty stories. The church bells rang as the sunlight poured through the stained glass windows, casting colors across the floor. Everyone rose when she entered Claire, radiant in white, the veil draped delicately over her hair, her arm looped through her father's. She walked slowly down the aisle, the picture of a bride who had everything ahead of her. The whispers of admiration rippled through the pews, but I barely heard them because she looked at me. It wasn't a passing glance. It wasn't just nerves. Her eyes found mine in the crowd and held me in place. For a second, the entire room disappeared. She smiled, but it was the kind of smile you give someone who knows your secrets, not the man waiting at the altar. That man was Daniel, her fiancé, the one everyone thought was her perfect match. My best friend. I should have looked away, but I didn't. My chest tightened. My hands curled into fists, and all I could think about was the years of stolen moments leading to this. Coffee shared at midnight when she couldn't sleep. Walks. That went on too long because neither of us wanted to say goodbye. Conversations that dug deeper than either of us had intended, touching places in our hearts we weren't supposed to touch. We told ourselves it was nothing, that it was friendship, that boundaries were clear. But her look at that altar told me the truth neither of us had dared to say out loud. Something had always been there. The vows were spoken, the rings exchanged. Applause filled the room as they were pronounced husband and wife. But I couldn't move. When Daniel kissed her, I swore I saw her eyes flicker toward me again, just for a second. Just long enough to leave me wrecked at the reception. Laughter and music carried through the hall. Claire danced in Daniel's arms, smiling, spinning. Under the lights, but she looked over his shoulder every so often, seeking me out. Each glance burned, and I drank too much trying to drown it. When she finally walked past me, her perfume catching me off guard, she whispered as though she'd rehearsed it. "Meet me upstairs." Room 214. My heart hammered so loudly, I thought, someone might hear. I should have walked away. I should have thrown the key she slipped into my hand back at her. But I didn't. The hallway to the hotel rooms was silent except for the pounding in my chest. I hesitated outside the door, every warning in my mind screaming. She had just married him. My best friend. I told myself to turn around. But when I pushed open the door, she was there, veil off, shoes kicked to the side, hair undone, looking at me with the same eyes that had undone me at the altar. "I shouldn't have asked you here," she whispered, her voice trembling. "But when I saw you today, I couldn't stop myself." I closed the door behind me, the world outside vanishing. "Claire," I began, but the words fell apart. Because she was crying now, her hands clutching at the fabric of her dress, torn between what she promised and what she felt. We didn't rush. We sat on the edge of the bed, silent, stretching, her hand finding mine, trembling. Every brush of her fingers told me more than words ever could. The weight of years of things unsaid pressed down on us until finally she leaned into me, forehead against mine, her breath unsteady. "I don't know how to love him the way I love you," she confessed. I pulled her closer, not kissing her. Not yet, just holding her while the storm inside us grew. The night stretched endlessly, every second a choice we couldn't undo. When her lips finally touched mine, it was soft, hesitant, but it carried years of longing, of restraint breaking all at once. It wasn't the wedding that changed everything. It was the way she looked at me in that church, the look that tore down every boundary, every defense. And as I held her that night, while the world outside celebrated her marriage, I knew neither of us would ever be the same again. The night after the wedding should have been remembered for her as the beginning of a new life with Daniel, the man she had chosen in front of the world. But for both of us, it became the night when choices collapsed under the weight of feelings that had been silenced for too long. After that evening in room 214, nothing was ever the same. We didn't speak when morning came. I left before anyone could see me, slipping out while the city was still dark, the echo of her whisper and the warmth of her skin still heavy on me. I told myself it was a mistake, that it would never happen again, that she belonged to him now and I had to let it go. But when I saw her at the breakfast table later, her hair pinned back, a polite smile painted on her lips while guests congratulated. She looked up once and her eyes locked. That single glance carried the memory of the night before, and I knew the story wasn't over. The days turned into weeks. I tried to avoid her, but she found ways to appear an unexpected call to catch up. A visit where she brought something as trivial as a book she thought I'd like. A walk down the street where she claimed coincidence. Every time, the conversation began harmless, but beneath every word there was a current neither of us could ignore. Daniel was my best friend, yet when he stood beside her, proud and devoted, I sometimes saw her eyes drift past him toward me. It was subtle, fleeting, but real. We lived in that dangerous space for months, balancing on the edge of restraint. She and Daniel hosted dinners where I sat across from them, smiling as though my chest wasn't tearing apart every time she laughed at his jokes. After the guests left and Daniel disappeared to take a call, she would brush my arm as she collected plates, or slip a note into my hand when no one was watching. The notes were simple at first. I miss you. I can't stop thinking about that night. But they grew bolder. I don't love him the way I love you. One night, after one of those dinners, I lingered behind to help clean up. Daniel had gone to bed early, exhausted from work. Claire moved quietly through the kitchen, her robe tied loosely around her waist, her hair falling messily to her shoulders. The silence between us was unbearable. She finally turned and whispered, "I can't keep pretending." I stepped closer, every rational thought screaming at me to stop. But when she reached up and touched my face, all my defenses broke. We kissed there in the kitchen, in the dim light, with the scent of wine still in the air. It wasn't clumsy or hesitant this time. It was desperate, hungry, a confession our hearts had been waiting to make real. When I carried her to the couch, when her breath shivered against my ear, I knew we had crossed into something there was no turning back from. After that, it wasn't about chance anymore. She found excuses to see me grocery runs that took longer than they should. Afternoon visits when Daniel was at work. Phone calls in the quiet of the night when she claimed insomnia. Every stolen moment grew more reckless, more intense. We laughed sometimes at the absurdity of it, but beneath it all, there was a sadness neither of us wanted to name. She was living two lives, and I was helping her do it. Guilt followed us everywhere. She confessed once, lying tangled beside me, that sometimes she would lie awake next to Daniel and feel like a stranger in her own bed. "I should feel safe with him," she whispered, tears dampening my chest. "But when I close my eyes, it's your face I see, your touch I want." I didn't know what to say. I wasn't proud of what we were doing, but I couldn't let her go. I loved her in a way that was raw and uncheckable. And every time she looked at me, I saw the same truth reflected back. The tension finally began to bleed into the surface of our marriage. Daniel noticed her distraction. He asked me once, over drinks, if I thought she seemed distant. I lied, telling him she was probably just adjusting to married life. The words cut me as I spoke them, because I was the reason she was pulling away from him. The months stretched into nearly a year, and what started as stolen moments of passion became something deeper, heavier. She talked about leaving him, though. The fear in her voice betrayed her hesitation. "Everyone will hate me," she said once, her hands gripping mine tightly. "I'll ruin him, and you'll lose him too. He'll never forgive either of us." She was right. The thought of breaking his trust haunted me as much as the idea of losing her did, but love doesn't obey reason. The more we tried to bury it, the more fiercely it burned. Our meetings grew longer, our conversations deeper. It wasn't just about desire anymore. We shared dreams, fears, visions of what life could be if only we had met under different circumstances. Every time she left my apartment, I would watch her go with a knot in my stomach, wondering if she'd ever truly come back. Every time she returned, she would run into my arms like the world outside no longer existed. It was only a matter of time before something gave way. And though we both feared the day the truth would rise to the surface, neither of us could stop. Love had trapped us, and we were willing prisoners. It began with small cracks that widened before either of us could stop them. Daniel wasn't a fool. He had always been sharp, quick to notice details others missed. At first, it was her distracted silences, the way she sometimes stared out the window as if searching for something beyond the life she'd chosen. Then it was the late afternoons when she said she needed errands, only to return with little more than a carton of milk or a single loaf of bread. He didn't accuse her, not then, but I saw the unease in his eyes the night he mentioned over dinner that he sometimes felt like he was losing her. That same night, after the dishes were cleared and the house was quiet, she slipped out and came to me. Her hands were trembling when I opened the door, and she buried herself against me as if my arms were the only place she could breathe. He knows, she whispered, voice tight with panic. I don't know how much, but he knows something's wrong. I tried to soothe her, told her it would be all right, but in the pit of my stomach, I knew she was right. Our secret wasn't safe anymore. Still, the moment her lips touched mine, all the fear faded, replaced by the same wild need that had been carrying us for months. We clung to each other as though the night might be our last, every kiss a plea, every touch a desperate confession. The following weeks blurred into a cycle of guilt and passion. She smiled for Daniel in public, laughed at his stories when friends came over, but as soon as she could, she found her way to me. Sometimes she cried afterward, her tears dampening my pillow as she whispered apologies neither of us truly believed. Other times she held me fiercely, swearing she loved me more than she had ever loved him. One afternoon we drove out of town under the pretense of her shopping trip. The air smelled of rain, and we ended up on a deserted road. The car pulled off beneath a line of old trees. She reached across the seat, her fingers tangling with mine. I don't want to hide anymore, she said. Her eyes, wide and wet, held a vulnerability that tore me open. I want to wake up next to you, not just for a stolen night, but every morning. I believed her then with all my heart. I saw a future in her words, one built not on secrecy, but on truth. But as the weeks passed, I realized she was trapped between two worlds. She loved me, but she couldn't bring herself to tear away from the life she had built with him. The house, the marriage, the promises, it was a weight she wasn't ready to shatter. Even if it meant tearing herself apart inside. The turning point came one late evening when Daniel invited me over for drinks. Claire had gone upstairs early, claiming a headache. He poured whiskey into my glass, his gaze lingering on me longer than usual. Then, in a voice that was calm but heavy with suspicion, he asked, "Tell me the truth. Has she said anything to you about us?" I froze, the glass halfway to my lips. My chest tightened, and for a moment I thought everything was over. But I forced a smile, shook my head, and lied again. "No, nothing. She loves you, Daniel. You know she does." He studied me in silence, then gave a small nod, though I could tell he didn't believe me. That night, when I left, Claire was waiting in her car down the street. She pulled me inside before I could even speak, her lips urgent against mine. "He's watching me," she whispered between kisses. "He knows. I can feel it." We held each other as if the world outside didn't exist, as if we could stop time. But the reality pressed in no matter how tightly we tried to close the door. The love we shared grew heavier the longer it remained hidden. It wasn't just passion anymore, it was longing, aching, a constant shadow that followed us through every moment of our lives. When she laughed, when she cried, when she whispered my name in the dark, it felt like the only real thing in a world built on lies. I don't know if it was love or madness that kept us bound together, but it was stronger than guilt, stronger than fear. Even as the walls began to close in, even as Daniel's questions sharpened and the risk grew unbearable, neither of us could let go. We had crossed a line long ago, and every step we took only carried us deeper. The night Daniel discovered. The truth wasn't loud or dramatic. There were no slammed doors, no shattering glass. It began with silence, the kind of silence that stretched so tightly it threatened to split the air in two. I had gone to bed early, or at least pretended to. Claire had stayed downstairs with him, her voice drifting faintly through the walls. I couldn't hear what they were saying, but I could sense the weight in their words. My chest burned with unease, but I told myself it was only paranoia. After all, we had been careful. Too careful, I thought, but when her footsteps finally came, upstairs, they didn't lead to her bedroom. They came to mine. She slipped inside without knocking, her face pale, her hands trembling. "He knows," she whispered, her voice breaking. "I didn't say it, but I think he saw it in me." I couldn't hide it. Her tears fell as I pulled her into my arms. She shook against me, clinging to my shirt as though letting go meant crumbling to pieces. I kissed the top of her head, whispering promises I wasn't sure I could keep, but I meant them all the same. "We'll be all right, we'll figure it out. I won't let him take you away from me." We stayed like that until the early hours of morning, our bodies pressed close, hearts thundering as if they could pound away the fear. And when her lips found mine, the kiss wasn't born of desire but desperation. Still, desperation has a way of burning hotter than any fire. We gave ourselves to each other with an intensity that left us breathless, as if that moment might be our last, as if the world outside no longer existed. The following days felt like living in the center of a storm. Daniel's eyes lingered too long when he looked at either of us. He didn't ask direct questions anymore. He didn't need to. His silence said more than words ever could. At dinners, he would sometimes place his hand over Claire's and smile, but the smile never reached his eyes. Each gesture felt like a test, and I could feel Claire suffocating under the weight of it. One evening, unable to bear it any longer, she came to me with her hair undone and her eyes swollen from crying. "I can't live like this," she said, her voice trembling. "Every time I look at him, I feel like I'm betraying him all over again. And every time I'm away from you, I feel like I'm betraying myself." I cupped her face in my hands, tilting her chin so she would look at me. "Then come with me. Leave with me. We don't need this house, this life. We only need each other." Her lips parted as if the words tempted her, but fear anchored her in place. She shook her head. "It isn't that simple. He's my husband. He trusts in me. If I walk away, I destroy him." I wanted to tell her he had already been destroyed, that our love had left cracks no vow could repair. But I bit my tongue because I could see the torment in her eyes, and I couldn't make it heavier than it already was. Despite the fear, the guilt, the weight of everything pressing down on us, our love only grew more urgent. Nights became our sanctuary. Each stolen hour was another defiance against the world. We whispered secrets in the dark, swore promises against each other's skin, touched each other as if we were learning language for the first time. Passion wove itself into love and love into need, until neither of us could untangle where one ended and the other began. Then, one night, Daniel didn't come home. His car was gone, his phone unanswered. Claire sat by the window until dawn, her fingers gripping the edge of the curtain so tightly her knuckles turned white. When the first light of morning touched her face, she finally whispered, "He knows. He's gone because of us." I wrapped my arms around her, holding her as she shook. But deep inside, a thought settled that I couldn't ignore. Maybe he hadn't just gone. Maybe he was deciding what to do with the truth he now carried. The fear didn't stop us. If anything, it made our moments together burn brighter. We clung to each other more fiercely, kissed like people starved, touched like we were trying to etch ourselves permanently into each other's souls. Every night became a rebellion. Every whispered, "I love you," a vow carved in fire. But we both knew the storm hadn't passed, it was only gathering. And sooner or later, Daniel would return, and everything we had tried to keep hidden would be dragged into the light. The night Daniel finally returned felt like the house itself was holding its breath. His car pulled into the driveway after midnight, headlights washing against the windows before the engine cut off. Claire sat rigid beside me on the couch, her fingers cold in mine, her chest rising and falling like she had forgotten how to breathe. When the door opened, the sound of his shoes against the hardwood echoed through every corner of the silence. He walked into the living room and looked at us both with an expression I couldn't read. Tired, maybe broken, but not surprised. His gaze lingered on me longer than it should have, and then he turned to Claire. "We need to talk," he said, his voice low, heavy. And then, just like that, he went upstairs. Leaving the weight of his words behind, Claire broke into tears the second he was gone. I held her, pressed her to my chest, kissed the crown of her head, whispering, "We'll be okay. We'll be okay," though even I wasn't sure. My arms wrapped around her like a shield, but we both knew the storm had only begun. That night, she didn't go to her husband. She stayed with me. We slipped upstairs like thieves, our hearts pounding, the world outside the bedroom door forgotten. In the dark, she clung to me, her lips seeking mine with a desperation that left us both trembling. It wasn't just passion, it was survival, a need to feel alive, to feel something true in the middle of the chaos. Her hands traced the lines of my body as though memorizing me, her whispers filling the air between our kisses. "I don't care what happens tomorrow. Right now, you're mine, only mine." I kissed her harder, my fingers tangling in her hair, pulling her closer until there was no space left between us. The heat of her skin pressed against mine, and every touch felt like fire. Every breath stolen between us deeper than the last. We moved together as if we had been made for this, for each other, as if our bodies had always known a truth our hearts had only just discovered. The hours stretched endlessly. Every kiss, every caress, every shuddering gasp was a vow carved into our skin. Passion blurred into love until there was no line left between the two, until nothing else mattered but the way she whispered my name like a prayer. When dawn finally came, the room was thick with the scent of our closeness, the sheets tangled around us. She lay against me, her head on my chest, her breath warm against my skin. For the first time, I realized how complete it felt to have her there, how terrifying it was to imagine a world where she wasn't. But outside that room, Daniel was awake. I could hear him moving in the kitchen, the clink of a glass, the steady scrape of a chair against the floor. Claire stirred against me, her eyes fluttering open, panic flooding her features as the reality of morning returned. "Stay," I whispered, holding her tighter, unwilling to let go. "Please, just stay with me." Tears welled in her eyes as she kissed me, slow and aching, the kind of kiss that felt like both hello and goodbye. "I want to," she breathed, her lips brushing mine. "God, I want to." But it's not just about us anymore. Even then, even with fear pressing down on us, her passion didn't fade. Her mouth found mine again, her hands roaming over me as though imprinting every last detail. The urgency returned, fiercer, sharper, like she needed to burn me into her. Memory in case this was the last time we loved each other with abandon. Hearts racing, bodies trembling, the world outside be damned. It was fire, pure and consuming, and we let it devour us until exhaustion finally claimed us both and when she finally pulled away. Wrapping herself in silence, her eyes held a storm I couldn't calm. She left my room with shaky steps, and I lay there in the wreckage of our night, knowing something had shifted. The line had been crossed long ago, but now it felt like there was no turning back. The morning after carried a heaviness neither of us could ignore. I could hear Daniel's voice downstairs on the phone, sharp, clipped, his words carrying a frustration that settled like glass shards in the air. Claire stood at the edge of my bed, her hair tangled from our night, her skin still glowing with the remnants of us. She looked beautiful and wrecked at the same time, like someone caught between two lives and unable to choose. When she finally went downstairs, I stayed in my room listening to the muted exchange between them. Daniel asked her where she had been the night before, his suspicion plain. Her voice trembled as she gave him half-truths talking about needing space, about feeling suffocated. She never said my name. She never said where she had truly been. That entire day stretched painfully slow. I couldn't face him. Every sound of his footsteps made my chest tighten. Every time his voice called out to Claire, I felt like I was intruding on a life that was never meant to be mine. But when night fell again, she came back to me. She knocked softly, her eyes filled with desperation. "We can't stop," she whispered before I even pulled her inside. "I've tried. I swear I've tried, but I can't stay away from you." And then her lips were on mine again, her hands pulling at me like she was drowning, and I was the only thing keeping her afloat. I didn't resist. I couldn't. Every touch was electric, every kiss more intoxicating than the last. She pressed her body against mine, her heartbeat wild against my chest. It wasn't careful anymore. It wasn't hesitant. It was hunger. Raw and consuming, the kind that came from knowing how fragile time could be. The nights blurred into each other after that. We would steal whatever moments we could, whispers in the hallway, touches that lingered too long, kisses stolen in the shadow of closing doors. And when the house grew quiet, she would find her way back to me, and together we would burn until the first hint of dawn. But the tension was building, and we both felt it. Daniel was growing distant, suspicious. He watched her more closely, asked more pointed questions. Once, I caught his eyes lingering on me with something sharp in them, something that made my stomach twist. One evening, he confronted her in the kitchen while I listened from the top of the stairs. His voice was low but unyielding. "You've changed. You look at me differently. You avoid me." "Who is it, Claire? Tell me who it is." There was silence, so heavy I thought I might suffocate. Then she spoke, her voice steady but quiet. "It's not that simple, Daniel." Those words cut through me. She hadn't denied it. She hadn't admitted it either, but she had left the truth hanging between them like a blade. That night when she came to me, she was trembling, her eyes swollen from tears. I pulled her into my arms, kissed her forehead, her cheeks, her lips, whispering promises I wasn't sure I could keep. She clung to me as if the world outside that room didn't exist. We made love with a desperation I hadn't felt before, like it might be the last time. Her fingers dug into my back, her body arched against mine, every breath, every moan, every whispered word carrying the weight of everything we couldn't say in daylight. It was fire and surrender, passion and fear, all tangled together until I couldn't tell where I ended and she began. After she lay against me, her tears dampening my chest. "I don't know how long we can keep this," she whispered. "I don't know what will happen when he finally knows." I kissed her hair, held her tighter, and told her I didn't care. But deep down, I knew the truth. The storm was coming, and soon we'd have no choice but to face it.